Welcome to What? That Old Queen? A candid and adult take on queer life quandaries at a certain age. So please listen at your own discretion. Presented by Bernie and Tommy, the views here are purely those of the content providers and in no way reflect those of any service you may hear this program on. Now, please let your ears be upstanding for the Old Queens. Hi, Tommy.
Hi there.
How you doing?
I've just got 2 messages on Grindr from France.
Oh, bonjour.
I know. I think they've opened gates and you can now go worldwide.
That's cool. Are you going international?
It seems so.
Do you like a bit of French?
I think we all do.
And also, we have a special guest again this week.
Who, up until recently, had a very big part in the West End.
Yes. In the Only Fools and Horses, the musical. Welcome to the show, the lovely, funny Peter Baker.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, you sounded very posh there.
It's a joy to be here. I know, this is my podcast voice.
He is posh.
Is he?
It's all learned. It's all learned.
He's not like us.
No, yeah. I mean, after a couple more glasses of wine, I'm sure, he'll be slipping his P's and Q's like the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think that I was half Yeah, my mum's a northerner and my dad's from Jamaica, but the teacher at school said if Peter's serious about drama, he really needs elocution lessons. So that's how I ended up sounding the way I do.
Really? Elocution?
Yeah. People, when they came to my house, they used to think I was joking because they thought I lived in some manor. Because I used to talk incredibly poshly, and I would say things like, "Oh, gracious," and then they were like, "It's like, oh, you live here, yeah."
Well, I had a similar childhood because I always say I was a bit like Stewie Griffin, whereas because I talk like this, but the rest of my family talk like that. So yeah. I used to get called posh and puff and everything when I was younger because of my voice as well. But I didn't have elocution lessons. I just had my mum smacking me every time I dropped my P's and Q's.
I have a similar experience because I had elocution lessons. And my parents always say, we spent all that money on elocution lessons and all you can say is your computer.
I've never heard you say your computer like that before. Anyway, Peter, you've gone from the dizzy heights of improvisational theatre, Closer Each Day in Bristol, Murder She Didn't Write, which was hilarious, which has toured all around the country, to the West End. How did that feel?
It felt quite surreal, to be honest. I mean, when I was auditioning, so I auditioned for the workshop. They had a 2-week workshop back when they were making the show, and that's what I was auditioning for. So I knew I was auditioning for something related to Only Fools and Horses. I had no clue it was a musical, nor of the size of the project or caliber of, some of the people involved. Well, all the people involved. Paul Whitehouse, who was writing it. So I thought I was auditioning for an immersive dining experience. So which was great because it meant I wasn't nervous. So I turned up because I couldn't quite understand why I had got in the room in the first place. And I thought, well, it's got to be because of the improv. And actually, the only reason I got, because if you straighten my hair and I look a bit glum, apparently I look a lot like the great Roger Lloyd Pack, who originally played Trigger. So, yes, I did the 2-week workshop. And then I thought potentially that could just be the end of it. But no, then I'm singing on the West End stage, and you can listen to me on Spotify now.
Ooh.
On the Cast soundtrack.
I should have lined that up.
Oh, we should have, shouldn't we?
Can you tell us what song you auditioned with?
Yes, so I only realised a couple of days beforehand that I had to sing anything. So my thought process was, what is a song with a Cockney accent? And the first one that came to mind was All I Want Is a Room Somewhere, My Fair Lady.
Amazing.
Which I think they were a bit nonplussed at my choice, because obviously it is a woman's song. They were equally nonplussed that I turned up with no sheet music, because I didn't realise it was a proper show. But thankfully my improv brain allowed me to respond very quickly that that's what I felt was in Trigger's brain, was at the end of the day, all he wants is a nice room to sit somewhere. So I think they thought I'd made a very informed decision, but actually it was just because it was a Cockney accent. And I got the words wrong, which I think is very Trigger. And
in this current situation that we're in, actually, that's all we have got.
A room somewhere.
Thank God. I think what's great about the show is that we've had people come who've never been to the theatre before, and a lot of people who do come, and it's, I think, because the show means so much to them, and well, to so many of us, you've got memories of your childhood and so forth. I think they do feel like they are at home when watching it. Obviously, I've no idea what it is like to watch the show because I'm always in it. But I have had friends come and say that it's an atmosphere unlike any other they've had in the theatre.
I watched it. I came to see you, and I watched it from the lighting box. And what was really interesting, and what struck me, is like the audience were made up of people that felt very much like characters from Only Fools and Horses itself. Like, it really felt like it was playing to, it had found its audience.
Yes, I think, really, if you think about it, what shows at the moment in the West End, what musicals feature Londoners or British people, a lot of them, it's American stories or...
And the show was massive, wasn't it? It just has so much love kind of nationally.
Yeah, it's huge. I think the biggest episode was something like 25 million, which is huge. I mean, you wouldn't get that now.
No. Are you going outside?
Yeah. I was closing the door because I had the door open, and then suddenly people were skateboarding and things like that, which was becoming quite irritating.
So West End is closed now because of the pandemic.
Yes.
Are you hoping that the show will reopen afterwards, or?
I think everyone is hoping, including the producers, that the show will reopen. There are some shows that have, unfortunately, just decided to terminate, and then there's Waitress, which opened at the same time as us. But obviously we don't know when that will be, and the longer we are off, the more complicated a return. But obviously, you'll have to re-rehearse probably because if we don't do the show for 3 months, it's very easy to forget certain things. So the hope is that it will be back, and I think certainly the demand for the show, it was selling fantastically, and I think we were lucky in some way because you had so many people would come. Massive fans of the show would be worried that we weren't giving a faithful performance or that it was going to be disappointing, and non-fans of the show were coming thinking they wouldn't enjoy it. So actually most people who came to see it, I think, left the theatre being really surprised and having had a great time. So word of mouth has been very good. So I think the goal is to come back, but we don't know when.
No. Well, none of us know when we can go back outside. Yeah.
No. No.
So how are you ticking over during lockdown? Are you working out any online performance pieces or anything like that?
Yes, I think actually it's been, it's quite an interesting time because, of course, a lot of the people that I've worked with in Bristol, we're all suddenly finding ourselves unable to, be going out and working. So a lot of the creative projects that people have had gestating for a while coming to the fore. And then, for example, with Closer Each Day or Murder She Didn't Write, both the two different improvised shows that I'm in, we're looking at ways that we can continue to rehearse together and perform and give something to our audiences who are unable to see us. So it's been creatively quite stimulating, I think. And I'm also rehearsing with possibly a show with one of the finest performers of our generation, someone who I look up to and admire enormously, the great, inimitable Tommy Marshman.
Thank you very much.
Are you going to reveal what this project is, or are you going to keep it under wraps?
I don't know what you think.
We need to get some clearance before we can probably talk about it.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, Peter's going to stay with us throughout our shenanigans for this episode. So we'll move on to What That Really Old Queen. Who have you got for us this week, Tommy?
Well, if I said to you, oh, my hair needs washing, or if I said, what a gay day, or if I said, seems like a nice boy, or if I said, shut that door, what would you say?
Is it my mum?
It's the mainstay of television light entertainment in the 70s and 80s, Larry Grayson.
Oh, love Larry Grayson.
Yeah, so last week we had Frederick the Great. So I thought I'd make it a bit more current this week with something from our youth, really, Larry Grayson. My friend texted me and said, I think you should watch a documentary on ITV about Larry Grayson because he reminds me very much of me, which I didn't think was a huge compliment. But after watching the documentary and reading up a bit more about Larry, I can actually see what she was talking about.
Well, can I just say that I've described doing this podcast a bit like doing a podcast with Larry Grayson, and that is to other people, not to you, but it's but that's a huge compliment because I love him. So, you know.
Well, he was famous really because he couldn't dance, he couldn't sing, and yet he worked those two things into his routine. He was fostered and he was adopted and lived in Nuneaton, which was a poor mining town, and then sort of made his way gradually to be part of a routine in working men's clubs with a neighbour, and they did a sort of musical comedy thing. And then slowly he developed his own material, and he performed 2 acts of a night in a variety a night. 1 act as a woman in drag, like a drag woman, where he wouldn't wear a wig. He would just have his kind of hair, and he would do it up a bit like a kind of Liza Minnelli in Cabaret. And then he would come on at the end in a suit, a bit like Danny LaRue, as we were talking about, like making sure that there was a differentiation between genders, but ensuring thus, and this is why I really like him, is that he had 2 acts so he could get paid twice.
That's brilliant.
He sounds like my kind of guy.
I think it's a top tip for all of us.
It
Totally
is inspired.
I didn't know he did drag because that was never part of his TV career, really, was it?
No, I mean, this is way before TV. I mean, he worked for decades before he made it into TV. He eventually developed his own stand-up routine, and it was really about very much observational humour. And it came from, in his neighbourhood, he was the only household that had a telephone. So all the neighbours would come in and put some money in a jam jar and use the telephone. And so we'd listen to all these people talking about different characters from the lounge. You'd be listening to the people on the telephone in the hallway. And this is where he sort of developed all these characters, like once a week Nora, Apricot Lil, who worked in the jam jar factory, the baker self-raising Fred, Everard. I mean, I can remember him talking about Everard.
I remember him talking about Everard.
Everard, yeah. And so sort of doing all the working men's clubs and that kind of circuit, eventually in the 1950s, he got picked up by an agent who escalated his career, but not to a huge extent. He was still just doing a kind of like once a night kind of working men's club kind of circuit, until eventually he just got more and more successful kind of through working his way up. I mean, he was quite often just sort of on the bottom, but finally he managed to make it to the London Palladium. And reportedly he was earning like £75 a week. And then finally in his sort of heyday, he was earning more like 75,000 a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And I thought that he was a really good person to talk about in What That really old Queen, because actually he only became successful when he was in his 50s. So still hope for us yet.
Exactly.
Definitely still hope. I love Larry Grayson, and that story about him being the only, like his parents having the only telephone in the street, that was exactly the same as my house in the 70s. We used to have all the neighbours come round to use the telephone. It's crazy. And the weird thing is that people were real characters back then. There seem to be less real characters now than there were back then. You know, there would be the Everards and, you know, Fag Ash Lil.
Yeah.
all the other people that he made up and put into his routine. Peter, have you been exposed to Larry Grayson? Is this why you're gay?
Well, I have to. I think there are probably many reasons as to why I'm gay. I will confess that I did just do a quick Google image search on my phone to double check Larry Grayson, and I have to reveal a big gap in my knowledge here. So I'm finding this all very educational.
Good. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I think unless you grew up in the 70s, you probably wouldn't know who Larry Grayson was, to be honest.
Well, of course, as you know, I'm far, far younger than both of you.
You bitch. You look younger. You're not that much younger.
Acting age. It's my acting age.
When he got famous, like the first thing that he bought was a white Rolls Royce.
Oh.
What was the first thing that you bought when you got your big part in the West End show?
Cocaine? No. No, it wasn't. I think I don't think I bought anything massive, but what I did notice is that I suddenly became far more generous when out with friends. They let me get this, so I started being the person who gets the drinks or the meal. I think years of hanging out with friends who were earning more than me, who took pity on me and would provide me with, you know, a few scraps when out. I feel I've been doing payback.
Yeah.
Nice.
I felt that when I started making money as well. Obviously, that's all changed now because of COVID-19. But yeah, I used to like to be generous with friends and projects. What else drew you to Larry Grayson, Tommy?
Noel Gordon. Do you know her?
Oh, yes. Meg Mortimer from Crossroads. Do you know, there's someone who set up Meg Mortimer account on Facebook, which I've subscribed to, and it's hilarious. And it's very camp because they use modern day scenarios with all the old characters from Crossroads. But yeah, Meg Mortimer, I mean, huge gay icon.
Yeah, she was, they often partnered her with Larry as a sort of like almost pseudo heterosexual couple, but obviously that was not the case. My cousin was in Crossroads.
Really?
So I was like quite interested in well, I'm always curious about a heterosexual woman and a gay man's friendship and how that plays out. You could really see how that would really work with those two. There's a story that I love about the white Rolls Royce, and that Larry couldn't drive. So he would always recruit very handsome chauffeurs.
And why wouldn't you
drive him around? Well, you would, wouldn't you?
Of course.
And in the glove compartment, he always carried salt and vinegar, because in case they stopped off for chips on the way home from the gig.
Wow.
How often do you stop off for chips, Peter, on the way home from a gig?
Far more frequently than you would imagine, particularly if I've had a fair amount of wine. So I did get to a point, probably about 4 months into the show, actually maybe less, 3 months in. Obviously, we're all, you know, you're measured and you're fitted for costumes. And there's a particular suit that I wear that's quite an iconic suit that was made for me. And probably after about 2 months, I said to my dresser, I asked her how often she was washing the jeans, because I thought they were getting a little bit snug. And she just said, "It's not the jeans, babes." So one of the biggest shocks about doing this show is I'm not that used to actually seeing myself so often. And then, you know, every day you're in a dressing room with mirrors. I'm sharing with the guy who plays Rodney, who's 25. So we're talking, this is a good, my maths is terrible, 18 years younger than me. And I've got an expanding waistline. So, yes, I think my self-esteem took a bit of a hit and I realised I needed to actually do some exercise. So that's what I indulged in. I got a personal trainer for a while.
Oh.
And then after a while, I said, for the rest of the sessions, can you just give me massages?
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
Because I hated it. Well, yes. I mean, it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me.
Peter, you're ridiculously svelte, so I don't think you've got anything to worry about.
Oh, stop.
I, on the other hand, are good cape and lined. So
as long as I can fit into my costume, that's the main thing.
Exactly. And on that note, shall we do a little Shnack Out of it before the break? So Shnack Out of it is slightly redundant because we're not together to taste exotic foods. But I want to talk about milk alternatives. Now, have either of you dipped your toe into a milk alternative or two?
Yes, I've certainly dipped my toe. I'm quite I'm one of those. I'm a sucker for any new product on the shelf, so I will try it. And I have made my own rice milk once.
Oh, how did you do that?
Oh, it was far more involved than it needed to be. If I can recall, I think it was after coming back. I'd had it in Colombia and I really liked it. And I came back and I tried to make it. And I think you soak the rice for something like 10 or 12 hours and then maybe you blend it. I can't really recall. This was a good 10 years ago that I tried it. But
wow, making your own is on a whole other level. What about you, Tommy?
I mean, I've dipped my toe in. Alternatives are hard to avoid, really, but I don't have a problem with milk, so I just go for it, really.
You go for milk?
Yeah, I always go for the real milk.
Yeah, I was thinking of in these kind of lockdown times where people have been kind of stockpiling and thinking about things which last a little bit longer than milk, although there's plenty of milk on the shelves out there. I started using milk alternatives a couple of years ago because of a health condition. And I started off on almond milk, but I really love oat milk. Oat milk is amazing in coffee and it's a much more environmentally friendly alternative. But what I wanted to talk about today is a milk alternative called Sproud, and it's made out of peas.
I've heard about this, but I've not tried it. Tell me more.
Well, actually, it tastes all right, but it froths up really well in my milk frother because I'm all about, a latte, especially now I can't go to...
I think what it was called. Did you say it was called Proud?
Sproud.
Oh, Sprout.
Yeah. I thought it was called Sprout originally. I'm not up for sprout milk. I don't like sprouts at the best of times. But no, it's called Sprout and it's made out of peas. It's all right, I think, as a last resort. Bizarrely, I bought 6 cartons of it in lockdown. But I'm using it in between oat milk to try and wean myself onto it. It doesn't taste as creamy. It just tastes a little bit nothing. Whereas I would
imagine it's very easy to make oat milk. I think you just put it in a muslin bag, oats, and then soak it overnight in water, and then you're left with some oaty water, really, which is oat milk.
Oh,
is that right?
I don't know. I've never made...
Sounds about right.
I haven't made alternative milk myself, so maybe I'll look into it. If I can find an oat milk recipe, I'll stick it up on the website on our blog. How about that for our listeners? You get so much for your buck.
Sounds like a treat.
I think they'd be very grateful.
Right. And on that note, we are going to go for a short break and we'll be back after this. Right, so we're back after the break. Tommy, you wanted to say a little bit more about Larry Grayson, didn't you?
Well, we missed out his sort of heyday, which was the Generation game, which is what I remember him on.
Yeah.
With the lovely Iris and Claire.
Yes.
And that was really kind of like his moment where he was a real household name, and like loads of people loved him, and the idea of him being gay was not really, everyone just thought that he was camp and fun. They didn't actually perceive him as a sexual being, which he wasn't really. He was much more of an asexual person, but with a very camp sensibility, I guess. So he did that for a long time, took over Bruce Forsyth, and that was a completely different move for the BBC to take out, like for him to take over that show. And he did that, and then after, I think he made the very difficult decision for that to finish, and hoped that there would be new projects come around, and no real projects really came after that. He did like lots of pantos and guest spots, but that kind of signified really his kind of decline into not being on the telly so much. And he moved to Torquay, which it seemed like he absolutely hated, and then moved back to Nuneaton, which seemed like his favourite place to be in the world. And then finally was invited back to the London Palladium to do a Royal Run, and kind of did a show which didn't quite hit the mark.
Right.
And it was like people were watching him saying, this isn't really how we want to remember him. And then sadly, he died a couple of months later.
Oh, that's a shame. Because he was an ideal choice for the Generation Game after Bruce Forsyth, who was brilliant in that. But
well, how it was described was like the fact that he was so chaotic, and he didn't follow the rules, and he was really hard to kind of keep into a kind of organized structure. So that's why the lovely Isla Sinclair became much more significant in that show, because she would hold the whole thing together.
Right.
And then he was allowed to just do a lot of ad-libbing with the guests and the audience, and that's where he really excelled.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's why he reminds me of you.
Because I have got no structure.
No, because you're very good at that. You like a bit of chaos, don't you?
I do love chaos. Yeah, love chaos.
I do think that's one of the great things about live theatre, especially if there's an element of freedom or improvisation or audience interaction. I think those are often the moments that are most thrilling.
Yes, that's the beauty.
As a performer.
Yeah, beauty of live shows, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're the sort of things which I hated when I first started performing, because I'm such a perfectionist, which is why I've always loved kind of recorded media and film and radio. But actually, the more that the more I did it, the more I kind of relished that, and the fact that the performance was different every night because the audience was different every night. They're like the ex-member of the cast, and they completely create the atmosphere and the energy in the room, and how everyone on stage will perform, really.
And this is what feels quite difficult for me to get my head around at the moment, in the sense that a lot of people are talking about putting their work online, and then you do really miss that vital component of like how you actually engage in the live moment and that banter with the audience. Even if it's a set show, there's still so many nuances that you have when it's live. Definitely.
And I think the lack of having any sort of audio or performing something that you are used to performing in front of an audience means that it affects the quality of the work that you're doing, and it ends up almost feeling like a sort of strange shadow of what you would set out to do.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we have a little bit of that spontaneity on this show, because we have a very loose structure.
Well, loose is always a word I've used to describe you, Bernie.
Well, it's a very good word to describe me. Anyway, so we're going to move on to What That Old Kink. This is inspired by an article from Listverse. And I'm not going to go through the whole things, but it's 10 parts in the history of kinky sex. And it goes through from kind of prehistory cave paintings in prehistory depicting genitalia and sexual acts. Apparently there's one in France of a bisexual threesome where the woman is being spanked whilst pleasuring two guys. So
interesting.
Everyone back then was doing the kinky stuff like they are now.
Have we got images that we can see of that?
I don't know. I'll do a bit of research, see if I can put some stuff on Instagram. But from there, it moves on to Egypt, where there were lots of hieroglyphs depicting bestiality and sexual acts as well. And it kind of quotes an interesting story about Cleopatra, who had a very unorthodox sex toy.
I like the way you say clear.
I know. I want that as my ringtone.
Well, you know, I do Cleopatra how Kenneth Williams would do Cleopatra. So she had a very unorthodox sex toy, which was a vibrator filled with bees. So it was a phallic-shaped object, hollowed out and filled with live bees, causing it to vibrate.
That's incredibly innovative.
Right?
And the bees were never released.
Well, I imagine they might release them afterwards if they're still alive. But, you know, she'd probably have some scantily clad nubile slave to do that for her.
I mean, that would be a lot of petit mots, wouldn't it?
It would.
Just multiple little deaths inside.
Yeah.
While she's having her
own petit mort.
Yes.
I mean, I've got a couple of flies around here in this flat. I wonder whether I could carve out a carrot and do something similar.
You think about well, you know, we're all in lockdown. You know, if you can't afford a vibrator, maybe flies or bees are an option. I probably wouldn't go for wasps.
I did put my vibrator in the dishwasher like you recommended.
Did you?
Yeah.
And how did the dishwasher like that?
The dishwasher seemed fine, but I wasn't. But then I realised that when I took it out, I didn't know whether I was supposed to take the batteries out.
I don't think I suggested the vibrator. It was a dildo that I suggested, which has no electrical parts.
Well, I call it a dildo, but maybe it is a vibrator then.
It's a vibrator. Yeah,
it's a vibrator.
I wouldn't put that in the dishwasher.
I just want to say I've been to Dildo.
Where is Dildo?
In Newfoundland.
Oh, wow.
There was a small village called Dildo, and my late grandmother lived in Newfoundland, and she and my aunt decided when I visited when I was 15 that we'd have a little tour of the island, and one of the towns we drove through was Dildo, which has left a lasting impression on me.
I bet.
And is it related to the dildo that we all know and love?
Did they invent it?
It isn't, and there is what's his name? I think is it Seinfeld or Larry, one of those American comics who presents a TV show in America. He recently became obsessed with Dildo, the town, and started creating a lot of fake news saying that dildos were from there. And I think the Dildodians, I'm not sure what you say. The residents got a little bit upset with it because they're tired of tourists stopping to take pictures in front of the sign saying dildo.
Is there a big phallic kind of statue in Dildo?
They're doing everything they can to distance themselves. That iteration of dildos.
I mean, if I was the mayor of Dildo, I'd be kind of milking it for all it's worth, right?
Yes, good choice of verb there.
I mean, to be fair, they're not doing everything, are they? They could change the name.
They could change the name.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, I think the lady doth protest too much. Anyway, back to the Egyptians. And in keeping with their death worship, they frequently practiced necrophilia. Osiris, the god, was destroyed and cut up by Set, and Isis, the goddess, collected his parts. I think she was actually his sister, and put him back together, but his penis wasn't up to scratch. So she created a new one and had sex with the recreated corpse. This myth permeated the sexually liberal culture where virginity was unheard of and never mentioned.
I know about that one because my friend Catherine Hoffman made a show about it.
Did she?
Yeah. It's right up her cul-de-sac.
Anyway, shall we move on to the Greeks? Because
Yes, I'd love to.
So group sex in Greece, not limited to ancient paintings of threesomes, it was renowned for its debauchery and rampant homosexuality, the Greece society, and extreme acts of group sex were common throughout the Greco-Roman culture. So much so, it was frequently depicted on olive oil pots, which was their main export. So imagine going around le supermarché and getting your olive oil, and there's a depiction of some group sex on it.
I'd like to live in the world.
I mean, I think there would be some mass bulk buying there.
Definitely.
Yeah. Forget the toilet roll.
Let's buy the group sex olive oil. You know, it fulfills two roles as well, because obviously you can use olive oil as a lubricant for a group sex party as well, if you're so inclined.
Very true.
I've got 3 bottles of olive oil at the moment.
Have you?
Have you? Is one light and the other extra virgin?
Yeah, I don't think they're all of the same virgin level.
Mm.
I mean,
that's like all of us three, isn't it?
Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure they'd be using that marketing technique for extra virgin olive oil back then if they're having group sex on the label. Anyway, we'll
Mixed
move.
messages.
Yeah. Well, in the gay world, we have plenty of those, honey.
Don't we?
Caligula, we'll move on to Rome. The Caligula, Roman emperor, was very debauched. Incest, homosexuality, and murdering people during sex. Slaves or soldiers, he had sex with whomever he wanted and in any way that he wanted. He also had 2 party boats, this is the bit that I love, reserved for wine-fueled orgies. These boats had a capacity of up to 2,000 people. He was definitely having more fun than most of us right now in lockdown, right?
That wouldn't work with social distancing.
No, it wouldn't. You'd need a very big boat.
Well, but, you know, I guess they were pretty big if you could fit 2,000 people on them. I mean, that's massive. When you think of those times, you think of them being quite primitive and like boats being quite small, but that would have been a massive boat if 2,000 people could get on there and have a debauched orgy.
I mean, I have to make, you know, well, no, I was going to make a semen pun, but I'm too good for that.
Yeah, but we're not, so carry on.
Okay, great. A lot of semen.
Anyway, the list goes on. I'll put the link in the description of the show so people can explore it a little bit more. Maybe we'll come back to it at a future episode.
What I'm curious about is when you just describe things as I mean, maybe I'm just being naive, but I've never heard that expression before.
Well,
I suppose it's prehistoric, isn't it?
Yeah, so
Is
it before records?
Yes, so it's cavemen and people like that. I mean, and depending on what kind of narrative of history that you believe in, because there are many different narratives right now, because there are alternative forms of history. There's history saying that human beings have been around for a lot longer, and there may have been a higher civilization way back then, you know, akin to what we have now, but it got destroyed, and we went back kind of to the Dark Ages, and then we're coming back up again. Who knows what will happen after this pandemic? But yeah, prehistory is like people painting in caves. I mean, maybe they had a COVID virus and had to go and live back in caves back then and started, you know, painting porn on the walls.
I've already started.
Are you having a dirty protest in your flat?
A dirty protest.
Yes.
I think that that's imminent.
I think it's imminent for me as well. Social distancing dating, is it happening?
Yes, I've done it.
How is it for you? I mean, we're all singletons on this show. We're all homos alone. So but the thing is that, I mean, social distancing before the pandemic, some dates for me never really happened anyway. And now it's definitely not happening. But what about you two?
I've been on 2 online dates since lockdown with the same person.
That's amazing. And what happened?
Well, we decided what we were going to eat for dinner. So we both cooked the same thing.
Oh.
Then we put our videos on at the same time and just sat and ate our food and drank our wine and chatted.
That's very nice.
It was very civilized.
That sounds lovely. I've not got to that point yet. I mean, people didn't want to go on a date with me before. They just wanted to have sex with me. So, you know, I'm not at that point where people want to go on a virtual date. How about you, Peter?
Well, I had started have a couple of dates just as lockdown was about to happen. And then we have kept in contact, and I think he was quite insistent wanting to come round. And I have to say that I'm quite enjoying this aspect of getting to know someone without clogging it up with all the physical. So I quite enjoyed the fact that then there was a lockdown. It said, no, I can't see you, but you're welcome to keep talking to me if you want. So, but we haven't gone as far as doing an actual date. So I think I'm going to steal that idea, Tommy.
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I think like it makes, I did it on a Sunday night. Something to look forward to really at the end of the weekend.
Was there any kind of visual hanky-panky or not?
I did end up taking my top off.
Well, I mean, you do that every time we record. So, I mean, that's de rigueur, right?
Well, I'm really cold tonight, so I'm putting things on.
I know, I'm missing your midriff.
But we were talking about the immunization. I can't say the word.
Immunization.
Yeah, and how it's visible on people's arms. And I said that I didn't have one that was visible. And so
you probably could have just pulled your sleeve up, though, really, couldn't you?
Well, I couldn't do it in a jumper, could you?
No, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, you're practically perfect in every way, Tommy. So, you know.
Flawless.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we're going to move on to Queens of Agony. We might pick up this conversation during that because I think one of the questions is related to this. But before we do, I'm going to do some inspirational quotes because obviously we're all going through this pandemic. So the quotes are, I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination. And that's from James Dean. You're never too old to set another goal or to dream another dream. And that's from C.S. Lewis. And try to be a rainbow in someone else's cloud. And that's from Maya Angelou.
Lovely.
Yes.
And all the rainbows being painted on the windows.
That's for the Nightingale hospitals, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
Yes,
I think so.
Oh, I thought it was just children giving them something to do.
No, they've been well. It is to give children something to do, but it's there was a social media thing about making rainbows for the Nightingale hospitals, which have been set up for COVID-19. And they were sending them in, and they had to tell them to stop sending them in and just post them on social media or put them in their windows because they were getting too many of them.
So the next time that we're able to go to a Pride event and there's all these rainbows happening, do you think people will mistake it and think it's a fundraiser for the Nightingale Hospital?
I don't think we're going to.
They might do.
I don't think we're going to allow them to mistake it for that, are we?
Well, if they do think it's a fundraiser, we'll just take the money.
I mean, we need it, right?
First rule of improv, always say yes.
Yes. Anyway, Queens of Agony. You ready for some questions, boys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, dear old queens and Peter, since Miss Corona decided to cancel Earth, and obviously going on a date, hooking up with another dude right now would be the stupidest idea ever. So how do I express to a guy that I'm genuinely super interested in him without coming across as pushy or annoying?
Well, I think just say I'm super interested in you. Full stop.
I'm not pushy and annoying.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just going to be completely out there.
Exactly what you've said to us. just say to him, minus the Miss Corona bit.
Yeah, that confused me, the Miss Corona bit.
Yeah.
I thought Miss Corona was going on a date.
Your missive. Yes, I was unsure as to who the relationship was between.
Yeah.
Once it became clear, I realized. I think just be open and honest. And if he finds that annoying, then that's his problem.
I mean, everybody kind of understands what's going on right now. So
still a lot of people messaging saying, "Can I come round for a blow?" or things like that to me, and it's like it's not very responsible.
No. Totally. But as we mentioned before, when we were talking about like video dates and online dates and things like that, yeah, maybe these guys could go on an online date and get to know each other a little bit better. You know, there's nothing wrong with a bit of video sex either, necessarily. I mean, I know you look like you're kind of set up for that, Peter, because you know your bed's kind of quite near your computer right now.
I'm slightly disturbed. You think that I'm on a bed? This is a sofa.
Oh, is it? Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much.
I mean, I can't see.
My bed is in the bedroom.
I can't see below. It looked like you might be in your boudoir.
Well, the reason you can't see below is that I am only wearing a shirt, nothing else. So to preserve the decency, I'm keeping it at this level. Yes, well, I mean, I have been asked to do, you know, a little bit of video sex, but I'm not that bothered at the moment. I don't know. The lockdown has had a numbing effect on the libido, shall we say.
I think it might be the opposite for me.
Really? Are you clawing the walls?
No, not exactly clawing the wall. As I'm an older gentleman, you know, I'm not as horny as a teenager, but I am kind of, you know, after a certain number of weeks, I get pon far, a bit like, Mr. Spock in Star Trek. So if I don't have sex after a certain amount of time, I climb up the walls a little bit.
Yes, I'm the same as you, Bernie. I do find it hard and a bit of a struggle. And yeah, pornography isn't really my thing.
I think I'm finding it. It's not that I'm not thinking about sex, but I think whenever I would think about it, I would always go to a specific place. I'm going to watch this type of porn. And I think having this lockdown and this not being able to, you know, hook up with people or so forth has, in a way, sort of it sort of squashed that repetitive habitual behavior. You know how sometimes I think sex and one's attitude to sex can almost become a little bit more of a habit and more and actually less about being inspired with what you want to do or thinking creatively. You just go to what you know you like. And so actually having this breather, I think is, I mean, like so many aspects of life, we're all in, you know, this is one giant reset and reboot in many ways. And I think I'm possibly having that in terms of emotion, you know, that side of life, sexuality and connection.
And you're also having like online dates with a guy or chats.
True.
So,
chats,
you know, that's kind of nice. I mean, I spoke to someone the other day and they were saying it's unbelievable how many dates and chats you're setting up for after this lockdown is over. And I wonder how many of those will come to fruition.
Interesting. I'm not sure how many will, but then it's hard to know. I do feel in us people interacting now, there's a bit more sincerity to it.
Well, it's the end of the world, right? So yeah, people are like, this is the last chance saloon, honey.
I don't want to think of it like that.
No, I mean, it probably isn't the end of the world, but it feels like it because it's so different from anything that we've experienced before.
I know. And I think I sometimes fear that I might annoy people because I do find it all a little bit exciting because it's that combination of what's going on and then the the fact that we are so informed that everyone else it feels like everyone else in the world is in a similar situation, which is strangely unifying. I mean, there's so much stuff to worry about, and obviously, I don't want, all the terrible, financial afflictions and the fears, but I don't know if I'm deluding myself, but I feel like I'm leaning into the optimistic side of it more, which might be a self-protective way of approaching it all. But
I think it's good to be optimistic. I think we can all take a leaf out of that book. Anyway, shall I move on to the next question? This is a longer letter, Tommy, so you'll be happy about this. I met this cool dude recently, but quickly discovered he made a fake profile to message me on Grindr, relentlessly asking if I wanted to hook up. Based on the name, he forgot to change it initially, but then realized and changed it. He has the same grammatical errors, spelling, misusing the exact same words he does in text, and I set my location to his house and the profile comes up first. I knew it was him. I brought it up and he freaked out, denying it. I actually liked him a lot, but now that I brought this up and he keeps denying it, I'm not so sure. And now, unfortunately, I look like the insane one. I realise it's unlikely that this person would actually admit to doing this and apologise, so should I just move on?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say I'm really sorry. Well, no, let's move on. Let's hear what Tommy has to say.
I would just say, I think, you need to move on. I think that, you've given him a chance to go, yeah, I know, I'm really sorry about that. Isn't that the stupid thing I've done? You've given him plenty of time for that. How are you going to, how is that relationship going to actually develop when you have this unspoken thing? If you just say, okay, well, I'm taking a back seat, I'm not going to contact or have anything to do with you anymore, then you're still giving him some chance to come back and say, actually, listen, I did make a stupid mistake and I'm really sorry. And then maybe you can reassess it after that. But in that current situation, there's no way that can move forward.
Why would you do that? I mean, I find it bizarre that you would actually set up another account and then kind of stalk the person that you're dating.
Well, everyone does stupid things, and I think there should be room for admissions of that. But I think that people need to admit it when they do.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then they've got a problem.
Definitely.
I mean, it's probably fueled by insecurity. Whatever's fueled it, whatever that is, he's obviously unable to admit to having done it, and you can't force someone to admit something that they don't feel ready to fess up to. So you have to put it in a box, shove it away, and wait until he approaches you, if he does, and apologizes or just owns up to what he was doing. But I have this image of a very embarrassed person.
Yeah,
thinking they can get away with lying.
I think if I had done that, I would definitely just say, and especially if I really like this guy, it'd be like, I'm so sorry. I've done this because I'm insecure. I know it sounds mad, but please don't hate me. And then see what happened after that. I mean, in any of this, the best course is honesty, isn't it? But if you're on the other side of the coin and now he's the one, like he said, he's the one who seems like he's nuts. I mean, is there a room for error here? Is he nuts? Is he just thinking that this guy has set up an account?
Well, is his name Ingrid Bergman? And is he being gaslit? That's what I'm thinking.
I mean, also those location settings, if it's on Grindr or something, they're not very exact.
No.
And a lot of, how old is he? I mean, a lot of these millennials are terrible at spelling at the moment. So the grammatical mistakes could simply be from the same school.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a bit dyslexic, so, my spelling's not great either.
I'm terrible at spelling, so it's not just millennials.
Anyway, I'd say give him a chance to fess up. Give it, one last time, and if he doesn't, then move on, and then wait for him to come back when he does fess up.
I think all of that thing, though, has to move forward, having this knowledge.
Unless he admits to it, I can't see that it can move forward, really.
Unless it is somebody else. I mean, it could be somebody else. You know, if you
It
really
could
like
be.
this guy, maybe you just take the bull by the horns and just carry on with it and see what
Or
happens.
just try and hook up with the profile on Grindr,
Yeah, that's true. Hook up with the other one.
Yeah.
the other him.
His evil twin. I mean, you know, we've all got 2 Grindr profiles, right? Okay, maybe not. Anyway, let's move on. Dear old queens, is this a weird psychological reaction to the times we're living in? I don't think I'm worried about the disease that much. I think I will be fine, even if I get it, healthy and young. But I don't have much, live alone, and lead a very isolated life, and don't have much sex. But now I'm fucking craving cock. Do you guys think it's anxiety, or is it me wanting what I really can't have right now?
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got
Till it's gone. He needs a big yellow taxi.
He does need a big yellow taxi. Well, I mean, I'm craving a good Negroni in a bar. So maybe it is. You know, maybe it is.
I'm craving a hug. Just a hug. I don't even care about the sex. I just want a hug.
Can we just, what was the actual problem though? Is it normal? Is that the issue?
Yeah, I think it's like he lives alone. He doesn't have much.
Yeah.
He doesn't normally crave having sex with other people, but right now he's really craving it because of lockdown.
I think that is normal. I think it's normal to feel really intense desires for things that you can't have, and maybe, you know, maybe his subconscious has lifted that desire that is always there because he actually can't act on it. So it's actually it's like a safe way to indulge the craving without doing something that maybe he doesn't really want to do.
Yeah, and what would be actually really interesting for him to do is maybe write a letter to himself and tell him his future self about this feeling, and maybe he would give his future self a lesson about what he wants to do in the world that emerges after this.
Maybe. I'm going to be complete devil's advocate here. I mean, if this is the end of my life, if I get, you know, coronavirus and die, the last thing I want to do is spending the last, you know, few weeks of my life alone in my flat on my own. What about just saying fuck it and having sex with someone?
I feel like we're in the middle of it, and that means that we're going to be coming to an end of it, you know, soon. Like we'll be in the middle of it soon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's developed. Like we can see a way out of this. So I don't think that's a valid point.
No,
Okay.
I haven't had those thoughts either, because I do think the end is, well, it's not in sight, but it's out there, and I haven't gone to that place yet. It doesn't
So
mean
you
I
believe
won't.
there's a light at the end of the tunnel? I mean, but the thing is that I wouldn't blame someone if they decided to say, I'm just gonna have sex right now. I mean, I know it's not the right thing to do, but I wouldn't blame them for it because it's such an odd time for all of us to live through.
No, I
I'm
wouldn't.
an unjudgmental person, and so I would be the same as you. But I'm talking about myself, and I feel like, I can see ways out of this. And I think that there's something that we're thinking about as well. Like, this is not about wanting to have sex, but like when you think about films or books, they are all about post-apocalyptic times. They're not about mid-apocalyptic times. And that's what we're in right now.
Yeah, because it's you know, by its nature with what we're doing, it's actually not very interesting, is it? I mean, we're all having our personal struggle. The things that are actually coming out as being interesting are hearing about different ways people are connecting with each other, the things that people are doing to keep themselves positive and continuing. None of it which would make for a particularly good read.
Well, maybe not, but actually this is an excellent time for like an affair to start with someone, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, because you could meet up outside, you'd be going out for your daily exercise, you could meet them illicitly. You know, it's an ideal time for like romance stories and things like that. And that's what I was thinking when I went on my daily cycle today.
Well, I think you're right. I think there's something romantic about it, because in this situation, in order to connect with people, you have to start being a little creative if you do really want to see someone. And as soon as you're trying to be creative, a bit romantic. I mean, there was one chap that I had sort of been seeing, and he'd stayed over, actually not in a sex way, actually, just he'd stayed in the spare room because his grandmother was freaking out about coronavirus. And he'd left his toothbrush, so we arranged a drop on Clapham Common, because, of course, that was when it had just been announced. So it felt like I was a spy, going onto Clapham Common to drop this toothbrush for him to pick up. I really enjoyed.
I mean, and it's very illicit right now, isn't it? I mean, any kind of meet with someone outside of your household is so illicit and quite exciting.
Yeah.
I can imagine there's going to be a lot of kind of romantic, kind of even sex stories coming out of this time.
Yes. I mean, it did make writing an erotic story.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it.
The hell of it. Sorry, were you thinking about me writing an erotic story?
I was thinking about me writing an erotic story, but if you want to write one together, let's do it. There
was a story that was passing around all the socials about a woman that was stuck with her least favourite polyamorous boyfriend.
Yes.
Oh my God. I mean, there's going to be a lot of those as well, right? Anyway, shall we move on to the next question? This is our final question. Dear old queens and Peter Baker, is it common for gay men to not do anal sex? So a few months ago, I've read somewhere that about 60% of gay couples never do anal sex, and I can't stop thinking about it. It just seems like a lot to me. So is it true? Do many gay men do not do it? Is it well accepted that in the community, if you don't want to do it, you don't try it?
I thought that was really interesting because he couldn't stop thinking about people not doing it.
I know.
Yes. I know, it's an interesting...
And I can't stop thinking about people doing it.
It is an interesting question, isn't it? It's not him trying to seek validation for that his feelings of not wanting to do it are right. No, it's more he's very curious about the people who aren't. Which is funny. It's almost like he wants to end it with saying, "Are they for real?"
Right. I mean, what do we think about this?
I don't know what we're responding to. I mean, there's lots of people that don't do anal sex.
Yeah, and that's fine.
I think there's loads of people that don't do anal sex, and I think it's fine not to do anal sex. And I think we've talked about this on this podcast before, that you don't gay sex doesn't just mean anal sex. There's plenty of stuff that you can do outside of that if you're not comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, kids, be happy with what you like to do and accept those who don't want to do it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It just depends, and but I think people get bogged down with anal, and I think there's so many other things that you can explore, especially if you don't be anal about anal. Just because we're gay men doesn't mean it's all about bum fucking, and there's plenty of other stuff out there. Just explore it.
Exactly.
Is that an invitation?
Always. Anyway, on that note, I think we've come to the end of our episode, unfortunately.
Yes. Well, I think I'm going to... listening to you guys always inspires me to listen to various music at the end. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is look up... I can't remember if they were 90s girl group or 2000s. Cleopaartra. I'm going to listen to them.
Coming at ya, Cleopatra.
Coming Archer. Cleopatra coming Archer. So I'm going to go and listen to that.
Well, it's about whether you say psychopath or psychopath. How about you, Tommy? What are you going to listen to after this?
I was going to watch...
Ooh, what are you going to watch?
Is it called The Dance of Reality or something?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
The Dance of Reality, yeah. It's a film that I watched years ago, and I wasn't in the mood for it. But I'm in really the mood for it now.
I've never heard of this film. What is it about?
Very beautifully filmed, quite painterly, Chilean, and
Oh, is it on Mubi?
No, but it's the type of film that it would be on Newbie. Yeah.
Well, if we're talking about what that old film, can we talk about Sunset Boulevard briefly before we leave?
Yeah, because I'm having a great time following the viral film festival on Instagram, and they curate like 3 films a week for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and you all press play at the same time, and then they go to Instagram Live. They're 2 gay guys, and they're so brilliant and funny and articulate about the way that they talk about it. And on Saturday night, they chose Sunset Boulevard, which is one of my faves actually already.
Me too.
But I watched it again, and it was just beautiful to know that you were sharing it with loads of people and you could ask questions at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an amazing film. It starts off with a corpse in a swimming pool and ends with that.
Yeah.
I mean, what film during that time period would have done that? I mean, it's crazy. And it's so camp, and, you know, I love it. I absolutely love it.
I asked what the symbolism of the monkey was.
Oh, right, at the beginning where the monkey is dead. I mean, it always kind of, it strikes a chord in modern times because of Michael Jackson, doesn't it? I mean, did he watch Sunset Boulevard and decide to have Cuddles, the chimp, after, you know, Norma Desmond?
Well, that's homework for next week.
Viral film festival chose films that were related to people that were kind of stuck in their houses. They also showed Beetlejuice as well, which is a really good one.
Yes.
Amazing. Sunset Boulevard is definitely a film for our time. And I certainly feel a bit Norma Desmond myself. How about you?
I do look good in a turban.
I've seen the pictures. What I really like about her is the cigarette holder. It's like a wire cigarette holder.
I want one of those. Anyway, that's the end of our show. So we're going to play out now. Say goodbye, Peter.
Goodbye.
Say goodbye,
Thank
Tommy.
you for having me.
Goodbye, Poppy and Pete.
Goodbye. We'll see you next time on What That Old Queen.
You have been listening to What That Old Queen, written and presented by Tom Marshman and Bernie Hodges. The show was produced by Bernie Hodges in spring 2020 for Hodge Podcasting. If you would like to sponsor this show, or you'd like to be a guest, or you just have a question for the Old Queens, you can email at hello@thatoldqueen.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.